Okay, so I've been feeling a little bit off recently, and I didn't see this coming, and I could have done, because I see this coming for everyone else, and I didn't apply my own teachings or my own knowledge to myself. I didn't take enough time to work it out for myself, and you know, I'm sorry, because that's had a knock-on effect on my video schedules. I could have released my solstice videos, a week ahead of time if I'd really looked at my own astrology and seen that one of my worst times of the year was coming up. But the reality was I was in so much of a flow. There was so much going on, and I didn't take the time to chart this out. And I could be full of regrets and resentments towards myself and say, oh, you failed at that. But actually, I think this is a really good learning point. So I'm going to make the best of this and share with you how you can find out your hardest times of the year, the times when you might feel like you're not quite yourself, when you're slightly off, and help you plot those times down so that you can maybe safeguard a week before and a week after, so that you've got time to recalibrate and come back into yourself. So what am I talking about? Well, what I'm talking about is when your sun goes into the opposition with your natal sun. So, for instance, the sun is very much about who you are. It's about, your essential being. It's about your personality. It's a really, obviously, a central place in your chart. And the moon also is, because that's about your brand of emotions, how your emotions, your psyche, your intuition will work. So the sun and the moon are pretty much where it's at. I do, that's why people ask what are your big three: your ascendant, your sun, and your moon. I'm just going to look at the sun and the moon in this one, but they are two of your big three. And when you're in the pattern of your sun and the moon, i.e. when the sun is coming back around, it really brings in an intensity. So I always find at the time of my birthday, when the sun comes back over where I am, I actually get quite intense, because I'm sort of intensely focused. I really start to ask myself lots of questions about my performance, and for me, it's quite a difficult time. And I know lots of people, in particular, Type A personalities, tend to get really quite um, um, maybe a bit stressed. Like the sun is coming back; it's giving you an extra shot of what it is that you are. Um, and then there are, like, I think the Type B personalities that get an extra, so they're a bit more comfortable being themselves, and maybe they're a bit more forgiving of themselves when, they're maybe not at peak performance. And so I find that when they get an extra shot of themselves, they celebrate themselves really, really well, so they tend to enjoy their birthdays a bit more. And, people that find their moon sign quite light-hearted, I think when the moon comes back round, yes, they feel more emotional, but in a kind of light-hearted way. If you've got one of those maybe thought-provoking, serious moon signs, or a moon sign that is quite delicate, when that moon comes around to the same spot again, it gives you a double dish of it, a double helping, and you can get really super sensitive. So like my moon in Pisces, when that moon comes back into Pisces, boy, do I feel sensitive. In fact, and I noticed this, and I said I wasn't going to do it, but I'm going to do it. When the moon or the sun go over my ascendant, go over my sun, or go over my moon, I feel quite intense, and I'm really in the pattern of my peak intensity. Now, what I'm actually talking about right now is the opposition of that. So what happens when the sun goes in opposition to my moon? What happens when the sun goes in opposition to my sun? What happens when the moon goes into opposition with my sun and my moon, and so on and so forth? Like, what happens when the sun and the moon are going into your not self design? And I noticed that not self is one of those terminologies that comes up in human design. I'm not an expert at that, not even a beginner, but I do like human design, from what I've seen of it. And they do talk about the not self. And I thought, wow, that's a really good little phrase, because, when the sun is in opposition to where it is at the time of your birth, the sun in its own position is you, and the sun in opposition is kind of like not self. It's like the complete opposite of where you are. It's the complete opposite solar pattern. And the moon, you know, when it's in its opposition to your natal moon, it's completely antithetical to how you do your emotions. It's like you're not self or you're not emotions. And so what I realized years ago was, when I'm a Sagittarius with moon in Pisces. So I noticed years ago that when the sun was in Gemini, I was in a bit of a funk for most of the time, in particular when it was exactly opposite. And I also noticed that when my moon goes through there, I get a little bit, this fly is a bit annoying. When the moon goes through it as well in the sign of Gemini, I feel slightly irritated. I find it really grating, you know. I don't feel at ease. I don't feel in my normal ease. So there's something that doesn't feel so comfortable, because whatever my design is, the cosmic energy, the cosmic weather, if you want to call it that, is pulling me in a direction that is out of my natural pattern. And similarly, given that my moon's in Pisces, when the sun and the moon are in the sign of Virgo, I really feel almost cold. I feel like I feel completely empty. I feel worn out, empty. And so these are the times when things don't go so well for me, you know, when I feel really out of sorts. And so what I wanted to show you, and this is what I could have discovered for myself, I do normally mark them down, you know, when the sun goes into Gemini and the moon's in Virgo, and when the sun's in Virgo and the moon's in Gemini, I normally plot those down. But what I didn't feature in, and I should have done, because I'm born literally maybe a day and a half before the winter solstice, if you're in the northern hemisphere. The December solstice is right around the time of my birthday, and my moon is in a square sign to my sun. So, you know, I have some of the programming of the solstices and equinoxes, and that's, of course, where we are right now. So I just want to sort of illustrate this with a chart, because this could be really helpful for you. So, you know, if you know where your sun and moon are, which I'm guessing you do, start to look through the ephemeris and plot down the anti-you times, the not self times. And then you can start to work out maybe what's going on. So here's where I really started with this. So I'm born at the time of the solstice. And so, you know, the first thing I'm saying is, are you born at the time of the equinox or solstice? You know, so my sun is just here on this corner. And of course, the December solstice works out here at 0 degrees Capricorn. The March equinox is here at 0 Aries. The June solstice is at 0 Cancer, and the September equinox is at 0 Libra. So by the very nature of when I was born, my sun is in a square to the March equinox. It's also in a square to the September equinox, and it's in an opposition to the June solstice. So whenever these quarter points come up, whenever these new seasons start, they have a big impact on me, because the sun is in a square or an opposition to where my natal sun is. Now, I've also got my Mercury there as well. So my thinking changes, you know. Is it as good? Well, I can say currently it's not as strong as it usually is. It's taken me a lot more time. It's taken a lot more energy for me to be able to do things. Normally, I rattle through my forecasts, you know, one after the other. You know, I might do 4 sign forecasts in one go, have a cup of tea, come back and do another 4, have a cup of tea. This time I've been doing 2 at a time and needing a whole day's rest in between. So it's really taken its toll on me this time. But my Mercury is even closer to these 0 degree cardinal signs. So, you know, the first question you might want to ask yourself is, do I have a planet at one of these 0 degree areas? Because if you do, the chances are these equinox and solstices are very activating for you. And by activating, yes, they can have a really uplifting effect. They can really create some change, but they can really tire you out as well. Because if you think about it, there is a weather change. There is a significant, in particular with the June solstice and the December solstice, there is a change in the hours of daylight versus the hours of moonlight. So there is a shift, and our bodies pick up on that. And then here, there is an equal amount of light. So these are the points, during the March equinox and the September equinox, when you have the same amount of light and dark, but thereafter you're either getting more light and less dark, or more dark and less light. So these are moments where the light to dark ratio is changing, and our bodies pick up on that. And so if you've got a planet at these points, that is going to get really pulled into this pattern. So you may well get tired, and a similar thing, like when the clocks go back, during those times, people tend to get quite tired, not like full of energy necessarily. So yes, I've been feeling a bit tired, but this, so my natal sun and Mercury my sun's at 27:53 and my Mercury's at 28:04. In fact, I was born during the Mercury Kazemi. Now, even though it's in the sign of Sagittarius and Mercury's not very happy in Sagittarius, I do get that feeling of the Kazemi energy, that thoughts just come to me and I find it really easy to channel, and my Mercury is in a sextile, quite a tight sextile to Uranus, which really helps me just like tune in and stuff. But trust me, with this recent transiting sun right here, I've been in this like not self, and my mind, I've not been able to form my ideas so clearly, so easily. It's really taken a lot of effort, and because of that, I felt like my energy's really dipped. And of course, 2 days after the solstice, not the solstice, the June solstice, 2 days after, we also had the full moon. So you had the sun at 1 degree in the sign of Cancer and the moon at 1 degree in the sign of Capricorn. Again, the full moon is really pulling on my sun and my Mercury. But that's not all. And that's why I think it's another reason why we need to take a lot more care this year, because we've also got transiting Neptune in a square right on, very, very close to the 0 point energy of Aries. And later on in this next year, we're also going to have Saturn going over this point too. So every single one of these season changes is also going to be affecting Neptune, and later on, like from next year, really bringing in the Saturn as well. So again, if you've got planets on these quarter points, you could get really tired out and worn out and emotional and stuff. So yeah, so I've had the sun in opposition to my sun and Mercury, the moon right over it, and then Neptune in this really strong square, really like pulling into that. And you can see it. I've just laid it out for you there. And so again, it's worth checking out your chart. And of course, if you don't have planets around these 0 points, it doesn't mean to say this doesn't exist for you, because I'll show you in some other charts later on that there are the natural seasons for you too. I'll show you that in a minute. But so every year there are combinations of the sun and moon in opposition to their natal position. So again, here's where my sun is, here's where my moon is, and I've spelt that wrong. I told you my mind's not working properly at the minute. But on the 13th of June, I didn't even type the year wrong. Oh my goodness. So yeah, I couldn't possibly demonstrate this any more accurately than saying I'm in a bit of a mind fog and been a bit tired recently. But on the 13th of June, in the year 20,024, the sun went into Gemini and then the moon went into Virgo. And so, even though they're not exactly opposite my sun and not exactly opposite my moon, they're in the opposing signs. And so, the moon probably can't really get much further apart from the usual program, and the sun can't get any further apart from your usual program. So these are difficult times. So you might, if you chose to work out when those times are, that would really, really help you. Similarly, this year later on in August, we're going to have the sun in Virgo opposite my moon, and then the moon in Gemini opposite my sun. So it's almost like there's 2 full moons going on across square signs. And of course, this is harder. Like if you are born with your moon and your sun in a square, it's going to take a lot more effect. Like if your sun and moon are in trines, its effect is not going to be quite so drastic. You might feel not self, but there's something about your makeup that makes the sun and the moon kind of work more seamlessly. But if you are born with the sun and the moon in the square, it's going to affect you a lot more. What I would say is always look out for your natal planets and know where they are. This is somebody else who's born around the time of my birthday, who also has their moon in Pisces. So they're a Sagittarius with moon in Pisces, and their sun and moon are more square than mine are. So the transiting moon is over her sun. The transiting sun is in opposition to her sun and also square her moon. Her transiting Neptune is right over her moon. So difficult time for her as well. Another example. So this is somebody who's got their sun at 0 degrees in the sign of Aries. So right now they've got Neptune over it. And then the transiting sun is in a square. The transiting moon is right over her Saturn and in a square to the sun. So yeah, watch these patterns emerging. So there you go. I hope that was helpful in, understanding some of these kind of difficult times that happen every single year. It is absolutely worth finding out where your not self moments occur, when you're really out of sorts, and then diarising. If I'd have taken the time, I'd have seen that the 13th of June right the way through to most likely the 25th of June, that I'm just not focused. I'm just not in my big picture. I'm not really flowing with my energy. My energy is very stilted and everything is taking so much longer. So I could have blocked out my diary. I could have, only been working on one thing a day, but I didn't do that. I was in too much of a rush. And, for that, it's caused some repercussions for me. But there you go. That's how you can find out. I'm definitely putting in my diary the dates in August. I think the 27th of August. So there you go. Lesson learned. So I hope that's helpful for you. Do everything you can to make your life easy, right? That's what it's about, because then we have more time to enjoy ourselves. So anyway, I hope you're enjoying yourself. I hope your life is good, and speak to you all soon. Bye for now.